a few seconds. All right.
Hey, big boy. How you doing, huh? Says, what are we doing in the house? Yes,
Whoa, Scout.
he just has to get settled. There's my big boy. Okay. There you go.
Okay, let's check on the. Yep, looks like we're up and running on the YouTube thing.
Well, good. So, shall I start?
Well, I don't know. Let's see. We got 6 people watching, 28 likes. I don't know how we did that from 6 people. They really, really like you. No, they like Scout.
Ah, they like Scout. Everybody likes Scout. Well, good morning. I'm Martin Tyner with the Southwest Wildlife Foundation, and this is my dear friend Scout, my golden eagle, and one of my very, very best friends. And we're going to do something a little different today. We're going to start by talking about falconry, what falconry is, where it came from, and how people become falconers and the methods we use to train the birds and all of that. We've started a little series of YouTube videos, just really short videos talking about what falconry is and the processes. And so mostly I'm interested in answering people's questions about what it is that falconry is and what we do, and how do we work with these magnificent animals. So, DG, you want to start with the first question for us?
Well, are we going to talk about the possible interruption?
Oh, yes, we probably should. Um, Last night I got a phone call about a great horned owl that may be coming in today to our rescue center. And I told them to just give me a call when they're on the way, and so I can give them instructions as to how to get to our facilities. And so if my phone, and I've got the phone right here, if the phone rings, please be patient. I still have to do my job, which is care for the injured animals. And so if the phone rings, I will answer it, and I will make the arrangements necessary to get the great horned owl to our facilities. And so, other than that, I'm all yours. So, why don't we go ahead and get the questions going?
Okay, we got one email question in advance from Alcides Salgado. Hope I'm not butchering that too badly. What are some of the obstacles into becoming a falconer?
The obstacles to becoming a falconer, there are lots of obstacles to becoming a falconer. Falconry is one of the world's most highly regulated field sports, hunting sports. All of the birds are here in the United States, certainly federally protected, migratory wildlife. And so you have to go through a long process of research. You have to pass a written test. You have to have facilities inspected. You have to uh, basically apply and be part of a apprenticeship program for 2 years. And so in order to be a falconer, now that's hawks and falcons. That's not golden eagles. The eagle is a completely different game. And though it's part of falconry, that is even more extensive than what becoming a falconer is. So it's a very, very long process.
Okay, Patricia asks, I have heard golden eagles can show affection. Is this true?
Can golden eagles show affection? Any truly intelligent animal can certainly show affection. And my golden eagle is one of the gentlest and most affectionate of all of the birds of prey that I've ever had. And I can say that truly with several golden eagles that I've worked with over the years. Scout is no exception to that. Um, he is very sweet. He's very gentle with me. Uh, he is mischievous. He's very smart, and he likes to. When I used to wear glasses, he would steal my glasses from my pocket and throw them out to the audience. He likes to, steal buttons off my shirts, and you can just watch him, and you can just see the glimmer in his eye when he's going to do something to tease me. And so it's very fun to deal with an animal that is this intelligent, and yes, to be honored as one of the very few people on the planet that can consider a golden eagle as his dear friend is just an honor beyond belief. And so this is something I've prized my whole life to have the ability to do this.
Okay, A asks, does Scout eat fish?
Does Scout eat fish? No, he's a golden eagle. He's what we call a booted eagle. Now, a booted eagle is an eagle with feathers down to the top of its foot, and these do not eat fish. Now, we do have sea eagles, which, like the Stellar's sea eagle and the African white-bellied sea eagle and the bald eagle that we have here in North America. Now, they're fish eaters. In fact, they're fish eaters and primarily fish eaters and scavengers, where the golden eagle is primarily a hunter scavenger, and so they eat mostly small mammals. They will eat some birds and they will eat some reptiles, but they never eat fish.
Okay, Jody asks, is there an age limit for someone who wants to apply to become a falconer?
The age limit for someone who would like to become a falconer now starts at 14. And I'll be really honest with you, I would discourage that. It's perfectly fine if you want to study about falconry, if you want to prepare to pass your written test at age 14, if you would like to basically hang out with falconers and kind of start your apprenticeship. But I don't think that anybody should apply to become a falconer or to truly start your apprenticeship until you're 16. And the reason for that is that you have to be able to have transportation to get you out to the fields where you're going to fly your bird. Now, I be honest with you, I started flying birds when I was 12, but I grew up in an agricultural area, and I had a transport box that would go on the bike rack of my bicycle that I could put the bird in and then ride the mile or so to a suitable field to go fly my red-tailed hawks and those kinds of things. But that's extremely unusual. Nowadays, there's just not very many people that live in a situation where they can do that. You need to have a car, you need to have a driver's license. And so I would highly recommend anybody that wants to get into falconry, if you're 14, please start studying now so that you'll be ready to pass the written test. Please start collecting all of your equipment now so you'll have all the equipment that you need once you pass the written test to be inspected to make sure you have all that you need to care for the bird properly. But I wouldn't even begin to get my license until I was 16. And even at that, it is so complicated and so time consuming that uh, a young 16-year-old young man or young woman that wants to do this, you have to understand that that is your extracurricular activity. You're looking at working with these animals 7 days a week for at least a couple of hours a day. So basically, as soon as school is out, you got to go work with your animal. And so that means no after school activities. Your dating life goes down the tubes. There's no other sports, no football, no basketball, no baseball, no soccer. Falconry becomes your extracurricular activity, and so it's a tremendous sacrifice to be able to do that.
Okay, Christina R says, how big, old, and how did you get Scout? We are a STEAM class from Arkansas.
Well, Scout is actually he'll be 19 years old, I believe, next month, and he was a bird up in Wyoming that a farmer felt was a threat to his livestock, and I was called in by the federal government to go to Wyoming, trap him, and remove him from the area. And so he was 2 years old when I trapped him. So he and I've been together for almost 17 years now, and just an absolute dear friend. Now his size, this is actually a large male golden eagle. In all birds of prey, the females are about a third larger, if you can imagine that. And so he's a good sized male. The average weight of a male golden eagle ranges from about 5 pounds up to about 9 pounds for a male, and the females average from around 9 pounds up to as much as 13 pounds for a female. And so he's about 8 pounds in size, so he's considered a very large male.
Okay, you caught me. I was trying to put a link in about Scout for the STEAM class. I'll put that in the description in a minute, but first let's go to the next question here. Sherry says, wow, he is beautiful. What is the lifespan of a golden eagle or other eagles?
He is spectacularly beautiful. The life expectancy of a golden eagle in captivity, if all goes very, very well, is more than 40 years. So they're very, very long lived. Now, in the wild, that's a different story altogether. The wild's a tough place to make a living. And in the wild, the average life expectancy, if all goes really, really well, is closer to 20 years. And so he's about 19 now, which basically means in the wild, he's a very old eagle. But in captivity, he's pretty much middle age. And so, yes. You're such a good baby, huh? You're my boy. So anyway, he is large, and there's a drawback to having a large eagle because they're not as agile. The smaller the bird of prey, the more agile it is, and so his success ratio, because of his size and the strength of his power, is limited. So a good year he'll catch 10 rabbits in a really, really good year, where my Harris hawk will catch close to 100 rabbits in a really good year because the hawk is significantly smaller.
Okay, here's one from our pal M127. I heard Scout and Bell don't much like Susan. Poor Susan. Are these birds smart enough to be jealous or territorial over Martin's attention, or are they just nervous around other humans?
Yes, they're nervous around other humans. I know you're going to go bounce. We got to stay here, sweetie. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You need to poop again. I know you do. We're waiting. Thank you. That's called a mute. A mute means it goes straight down. And I've got plastic on the floor here. He can slice, and the slice basically means he shoots it all the way into the kitchen. And so they're able to project their feces out about 6 feet or so. Yes. Huh. So anyway, the question was Susan. The vast majority of these birds, they are wild. I put in the time and effort to build that relationship with them, and I have a personality that they find comforting, and so I can walk in and I can work with a wild eagle pretty comfortably, and even though they're wild and they're suspicious, they're not nearly as stressed. Susan, on the other hand, Susan's extremely good with dogs, and that's how we make our living. Is we own a dog grooming shop, and so she's very good with domestic animals, but she just has a little bit of a nervous, kind of twitchy temperament to her, and that makes wild animals uncomfortable. And so when Susan comes in, they just see her as this kind of a little bit more nervous, a little bit high-strung individual, and they would rather not be around her. And yes, but if it's just me, then obviously he's just fine.
Okay, Emily asked 2 questions actually. This is part 2. The first one she asked was, what was your first falconry bird? And then also she asked, what would you recommend as a first bird?
Okay, my first bird was the world's worst bird for falconry, and the story about the bird is in my book, and a good time to plug my book. This is my book, Healer of Angels, and you can get this book off our website if you like animal stories. That's 40 years of wildlife rescue stories and the wisdom of grandparents. And on the cover here, this is Scout and I. So this is my friend Scout on the cover, and Scout has autographed the book. If you get it directly through us, he's autographed the book. I don't know if you can see that very well, but that's his footprint. So it's the only book in the world autographed by a wild eagle, and the profits from the sale of the book go to our wildlife rescue facilities. And the very first bird I had was a barn owl. And the way this happened, we talk about this in my book, is as a young kid, I was taking care of all kinds of critters. If I would take care of a gopher, a chipmunk, an injured lizard or snake, a little covey of quail. Birds were something I really had a passion for. And my neighbor down the street came across a baby barn owl that had fallen from its nest. And he knew that I liked birds, and so he brought me the barn owl. I was 12 years old. And at 12 years old, I was all excited. I had had this fantasy about being a falconer and about having a bird that would hunt for me. I read books like My Side of the Mountain and Baker's Hawk, and just knew that these guys would just be the best friend anyone could ever have. And that's absolutely not true, but that's what I believed as a child. And so when I got this owl, it came to me in this big cardboard box, and I knew that it would eat mice. And so I set mouse traps in all the places that I knew I could find some mice to try to catch some mice for it. And I jumped on my bicycle, and I rode my bicycle to the city library and checked out as many books as they would let me walk out of the library with about falconry and about owls. And so I started to do my research and started to understand what I needed to do as far as to handle these birds. And to be honest with you, I did everything wrong. I at least got the food right. At least I knew they needed to eat mice. And had the owl for, a week or two. And I was at the local grocery store with my mom, and the local game warden was there at the grocery store, and he had come to our school, 3 or 4 weeks earlier, and talked about, about wildlife and the environment and his job as a game warden and those kinds of things. And so I went up to him, saw him at the grocery store, and I introduced myself, and I says I was at the school when you came and gave a talk, and I just thought I'd let you know that I've got this really cool owl that my neighbor brought to me, and it's like going to be the world's greatest hunting bird, and it's going to be my best friend, and on and on and on. And it was just a big ball of fuzz, of just big fluffy white ball of fuzz. And the game warden listened to me and said, "Son, where do you live?" And so I told him happily where I lived and gave him my address, and it was the very next day, I believe, a knock on the door, and the game warden was there, and he asked if my parents were home, and I got my mom, and he basically told me that I wasn't allowed to have the owl, and he confiscated it, and he took my passion, my very best friend. I was just heartbroken. And so when he left with the owl, boy, I was just beside myself. I was so angry. And a couple of weeks later, the game warden came back to my house again. He knocked on the door, and I answered the door, and had this big cardboard box. And in this big cardboard box, he says, if your parents will let you do this, this is a much better animal for you to become a falconer with. And he had a red-tailed hawk. And so he opened the box, and here's this big ball of fluff, just like the barn owl was, this baby red-tailed hawk. And he gave it to me, and then I, again, got really excited and recommitted myself to wanting to be a falconer. And the game warden discovered that I had kind of a talent working with animals that are wild. And so he brought me a box full of kestrel falcons, and he brought me a covey of quail, and he just kept, bringing me animals because he found a kid that had kind of a talent for this. and it just meant that he didn't have to euthanize them because in that day and age, there really at that point wasn't um, a lot of regulations enforced about falconry. In order to be a falconer, if your local game warden didn't care, then you were a falconer, and that's pretty much the way it was. Um, and so for the next 4 years, I was taking care of birds, flying birds, with very, very minimal success. And then when I was 16, I ran into an elderly gentleman who was a multi generational Hungarian falconer, and he took me under his wing and he taught me to fly birds. And from that moment on, my success in falconry went up dramatically. And so that's kind of how I got started.
And what do you think is a good starter bird?
A good starter bird, I only recommend one. In all of North America, the only bird I recommend for a starting bird for falconry is the red-tailed hawk. And the reason for that is the red-tailed hawk is a large hawk. It's a very durable hawk. It's got a nice, stable personality, um, and it's not high strung. It's not going to hurt you. It's not delicate. You're not going to kill it, or it's going to be hard for you to kill it. Let's put it that way. And so that is by far the very best first bird for falconry. Um, Throughout most of my life as a falconer, you could only have one of two birds, either a red-tailed hawk or the kestrel falcon. And the kestrel falcon is a beautiful little bird, about the size of a cockatiel, and it's great fun if your interest is catching grasshoppers and the occasional field mouse. But it really doesn't lend itself to being a good falconry bird. And because it's so small, it's more delicate, and it's far more likely that if you make a mistake, you'll kill the bird. So the red-tailed hawk is the only one. In fact, if somebody wants to be one of my students in falconry, that is the only bird I will allow them to get. And they must trap their red-tailed hawk. They can't accept a red-tailed hawk from anybody else. Nobody. I don't want them to be given a bird. They have to go out and have the experience of trapping a young red-tailed hawk on its first migration. We call that a passage red-tailed hawk. To trap that bird and to gentle the bird and to be able to manage it and feed it and care for it. it's it's the greatest experience in the world, and unfortunately, far too many beginner falconers will go out and buy a first bird from a breeder or receive a hand-me-down bird from somebody that was unsuccessful, and it causes nothing but problems and nothing but heartaches. And so, starting off with a passage bird. Now, I know there are different countries in the world that you can't do that. Here in the United States, we can go out. The trapping season starts in September, and we can trap a bird with the proper licenses and permits. We can go out and trap a bird for falconry, and that is by far the best way to become a falconer.
Well, we have received a couple of donations. Alex Meyer did a super sticker with a donation of $1.99, and he did a little graphic of a red heart, but it doesn't show up on eCam.
Well, thank you, Alex. Thank you so very much.
And we also got one from Ashley, who says, "Happy 44th anniversary, Martin and Susan. Much love to you
Oh,
both."
well, thank you, Ashley. Yes, for all of you that don't know this, my sweet wife Susan has put up with me for 44 years. Our anniversary was the 18th of this month, so just really, a couple 3 days ago was our anniversary, and for Susan to have put up with me for so long, she deserves. I don't know what she deserves, but she certainly deserves better than me, and and uh, and I'm so grateful for her love and her kindness and her friendship.
Alex
She
also,
is.
Alex
Go ahead.
also made a comment. "Scout is really vocal today. I like his cute noises." Is he talking to you?
Yeah, he's talking to me. Scout is he's very chatty with me, and in fact, It just kind of amazes me because he knows when I walk outside without ever seeing me. And I don't think he can even hear me, but I can open the back door, step out into the carport, and Scout will know that he won't do this for anybody else, but he'll know it's me, and he'll start making these little chirps and whistly sounds because he wants me to come and hang out with him. Like I said, he truly is a dear friend. Um, and just so that everybody understands, he's a very, very dear friend, but he doesn't come back to me when he's out hunting. He doesn't come back to me because he likes me. And so anybody who thinks that you're going to have an eagle that you walk out and you turn loose and it flies off and you whistle and it comes right back to you because it loves you, that's not true. He comes back to me because he exploits me. Uh, this is the hunter, and I'm his dog, and I'm a really good dog, so he keeps me. And that's the reason he comes back, is because he knows that if he follows me, I flush out rabbits for him to catch. And if he doesn't catch a rabbit, he flies back, lands on my glove. I feed him anyway. So I make his life easier, and so that's why he comes back. There is, even though he's a dear friend, that's not his motivation.
He's like a fair weather friend.
He's an eagle.
Yeah.
I do not own him. I do not possess him. I serve him well. That's my job.
Okay. Mindycraft says, given that Scout will not tolerate a photographer when you're out hunting, could you wear a GoPro to get footage of him flying? Such a magnificent bird.
And I have worn a GoPro, but unfortunately, with all the movements and stuff, the videos are really bad. And I've got several videos with my Harris Hawk Bell, and we've kind of shot a lot with the GoPro and found that it's really better just to have somebody else have the video camera, and with Bell it works fine, but Scout, like I said, he does not tolerate strangers very well.
A asks, can you fly a breeding bird?
Can you fly a breeding bird? Yeah, you can. Um, it's a little more complicated. Basically, these birds, not only the eagles, but the hawks and falcons and so on, they do pair bond for life. And they do go through every year, they go through quite an elaborate courtship ritual. And even though you can have breeders that you use in falconry, but you do have to put them up really early so that the courtship, before the courtship season starts. The hunting season September through February, but if we were to breed Scout, and we can't because the federal government won't let us breed eagles in captivity, but if we could, I would have to put him up literally by the end of December, because January is when they start the courtship season, and so they're courting through January into February, and they usually lay eggs by the end of February, first part of March, and you can't disturb them during the courtship season, and also that does kind of break the bond between the falconer and the bird, because the bird is bonded to their mate, to the other eagle, if that makes any sense. And so it can be done. It's just a little more complicated.
Does Scout's behavior change during the season?
His behavior does change. I wish that I could offer him a mate, because he does want to breed starting, like I said, the end of December, 1st of January. He would like to have a mate and pair bond and build a nest and raise young. I think he'd be a tremendous breeder for that. But again, the Fish and Wildlife Service will not allow us to use falconry eagles for captive breeding. And I hope someday that they would change that.
We got another donation. That's from Linda. She says, "Oh, there's a character in a cloud that's putting the text for the sticker she sent, and she just says hi."
Well, thank you, Linda. That's so kind of you, and hello back. And I'm glad to see that you're kind of hanging out with us. Does anybody else have any great questions about falconry? We have done, I think we've released 5 beginning videos on falconry. Now, and the whole point of this little video series that we're doing is not to make any of you a falconer. That's not because you can't be a falconer uh, off of YouTube videos. It's just not possible. You really have to have uh, go through an apprenticeship program, have a falconer teach you because it's tremendously complex. But we did want to start letting everybody understand kind of the processes to get going so that if you do decide to be a falconer, you're equipped with enough knowledge that you can ask the right questions from people that are in your area who are falconers that can help you.
Okay. Amy says, so birds must be highly food motivated.
They do. That is the only control that we have. Again, we Scout's a dear friend, and we love him to death. But that is not why he comes back. He comes back exclusively for food, and if let's say he catches a small cottontail rabbit, something that he could actually carry. A full-size jackrabbit he can't carry, but if he catches a little tiny cottontail that he can actually carry, and he flies up to the top of a power pole or power tower or cliff or something like that and sits and eats, the truth of the matter is it will probably be 2 or 3 days before I get him back. Because after he's had his lunch, I could stand underneath that power pole and whistle and throw out food and whatever I want, and he'll just kind of look at me and says, "I'm not hungry." And so, come back in a couple of days when I'm hungry. So yeah, it's strictly food motivation. Now, the food motivation is what gets them to come back. But if they are not comfortable in the relationship, then they have to be more hungry, if that makes any sense. And so the better friendship, the better relationship you have with these animals, the less they have to be hungry to return. And so I hope I've described that properly. And so if you have a wild bird of prey and you have a really terrible relationship with it, the bird has to be very close to starving to be motivated to come back. But if you got one like Scout here, which is very comfortable in our relationship and in the environment that we're working, then it's far easier to get them to come back for food.
Is there a difference between a stranger giving food when you're really, really hungry versus the person that you know is a good source of food?
Oh, absolutely. And the difference is what it would take for any bird of prey, wild or not, or any wild animal for that fact, to go up to a human um, for food. They have to be very, very close to death. If they're so anytime you come up on a wild animal that is acting tame, it's dying, and you need to contact a wildlife rescue center like mine. You need to contact your state fish and game, contact police dispatch. Don't call 911 because they get mad at you. 911 is for human emergencies, not animal. But contact somebody qualified and say, hey, we've got this animal and it's acting tame. There must be something wrong with it. Can someone that's qualified come out and assess the situation? And so it could be sick. It could have rabies. It could be any variety of diseases, aspergillosis, West Nile, Frounce. The list goes on and on and on. And so if you find an animal that is acting tame, it's incredibly sick. And one of the big issues are when an animal is sick, they're far more dangerous because you think it's tame, the animal's still wild, and if the animal has enough spunk left in it, you pick it up, the animal will then try to defend itself and will hurt you. And so, never ever walk up to a wild animal that's acting tame. Call someone that knows how to deal with it.
Okay, SL says, do you still handle them during the molt? My Harris Hawk will be on his first molt in a few months, and I work so hard to get him manned that I am hesitant to not continue that interaction.
Oh, that's a great question. And I'm glad that you asked that question because this is one of my biggest gripes that I have with falconers. First and foremost, yes, I want you to handle your Harris hawk to the molt. I want you, and this is what I do every day. Now, right now I'm looking out my window. It's snowing, and so it's cold. Um, it's the temperatures below freezing, and a Harris hawk is not built for cold weather, and so my Harris hawk sleeps in the house. Now, my golden eagle, he doesn't care. In fact, the colder the better as far as he's concerned. But my Harris hawk needs to be in the house when it's cold outside. Because they do get frostbite quite easily, and I've seen a lot of falconers, Harris hawks end up with frostbite. So yes, um, my Harris hawk comes in the house literally year round. I have an unfinished room down in my basement, and so my Harris hawk will go out to the chamber during the day when the weather is nice, and then I bring it back in the house at night. So my normal routine with my Harris hawk is I go pick up the Harris hawk first thing in the morning, and we spend a little time together. We talk a bit. I put the hood on her, and we come upstairs and we go out and we put the bird out to its chamber, and I give her some fresh water, and depend on if I'm feeding it in the morning or the evening that gets fed. Um, and then the bird can stay there. And then when I have a little extra time, I'll go out to the chamber. I'll take a goodie with me always, and we'll go out to the chamber. And my Harris hawk will see that I've got some food. Will come over and I'll feed it, and I give it a little more personal time. Because I travel a great deal doing educational programs with the birds, my Harris hawk travels with me. So the Harris hawk is handled and manned 7 days a week, every single day, without exception. So that by the time we get to the falconry season, which here is September 1st, the only thing that I have to do with my Harris hawk is I just have to reduce its weight down to its flying weight, and we're hawking. There is nothing that I need to do, and so I can take my birds and I can just say, okay, the falconry season it starts in 2 days, 3 days. Let me start bringing your weight down a little bit, and then opening morning we're catching rabbits. I don't have to retrain them. And so a lot of falconers, what they do is when the falconry season is over, they put their birds in a chamber and they never touch the bird for 6 months. And then they have to retrain the bird and reestablish the bond all over again. And the bird in that 6 month period of time picks up a lot of bad habits, and they end up having a poor falconry experience. So yes, please, the falconry season is ending soon, and please spend the time with your bird. Um, Take your bird for walks. Make sure that let it eat off the glove. Let it just be socialized with you, and what you'll find is opening day of the hawking season when everybody else is still trying to get their birds uh, tuned up for the season. You're out chasing rabbits and having a great time.
I wonder if we should share when someone once said that the reason that Belle, your Harris hawk, did so well was because she's from a fancy breeder.
You know, a lot of falconers. I know you think you're going to go somewhere, and you're not. There's my boy. A lot of falconers blame the bird, and this is a real big problem. Uh, Basically, it is never the bird's fault, and so there are poorly bred birds. That's true. Um, Unfortunately, within falconry, far too often you get a falconer who was unsuccessful training this bird. So now what do I do with it? Well, he gives it to a breeder, and the breeder puts it back in the breeding chamber. The bird can have genetic abnormalities. They can have uh, be chronic feather pickers. They can have all sorts of problems genetically. I've got a peregrine falcon right now that it has from birth. Its vision is is very, very poor. We could put her in a breeding project and turn out other falcons with genetically bad problems. And so to deal with a high quality breeder is a good thing. Um, but that isn't why a bird is a good falconry bird. The reason a bird is a good falconry bird is because they have a good falconer that puts in the time uh, to to bond with the bird, to develop the relationship so that you and the bird work well together, and and that's far more important than getting the bird from a high quality breeder. But again, um, there are people out there that are breeding birds that shouldn't be breeding birds, that are breeding birds that have never been good falconry birds and probably shouldn't be bred. So that's a complicated issue, something that you really need to look into if you're going to become a falconer after your 2 years of apprenticeship and you've flown a red tail successfully and you've done really, really well, and you want to say, okay, I want to try something else. So I'm going to get a peregrine, I'm going to get a goshawk, I'm going to get a Harris hawk, I'm going to get something else from a captive breeder. That's fine. Yes, go and talk to the breeder, look over his facilities, uh, talk to people that have acquired birds, uh, try to get some idea as to, you know, is this breeder motivated by just turning out birds and for money, or is he motivated by turning out the finest um, game hawks that he can? So.
Okay, my dogs are going crazy over here. Ananda asks, I think you said apprentices have to capture their own hawk. How does that go? Anyway, that was an interesting fact.
Well, an apprentice does not have to catch their own hawk. An apprentice should trap their own hawk. Again, now this is the United States, because there are different places around the world where trapping what we call a passage bird of prey is not legal, and the only option they have is to purchase a bird of prey, and that's really unfortunate, because the whole process of being able to uh, build an appropriate trap and to be able to understand the migration patterns of birds of prey, and to be able to drive along and find the right bird that's the right age. And again, this is far too complicated to do just on a video. So, I'm just giving you kind of a real minimal answer here. But to find the right bird at the right age, the right sex, the bird that will be best for you, it might take you a few months. In fact, I have a lot of falconers here in Utah. They get all excited because the trapping season starts in September, but September is very, very warm, and there's lots of small rodents around, and the passage red-tailed hawks aren't hungry, and they get really disappointed because they'll see a red-tailed hawk and they'll throw out the trap, and the bird will ignore it, and they'll stay there for an hour. The bird doesn't care. They're not hungry, and they don't understand why they're not being successful, why they haven't caught the very first bird they saw, and it frustrates them. And this is where the patience comes in. I tell most falconers, get prepared for the trapping season, but you're probably not going to catch a passage red-tailed hawk until mid to late October, when it's cold enough that the birds are a little more motivated for food, and there are fewer small rodents running around the ground, and so the timing is appropriate, and so it's a long process. When you trap that first bird, and again, I don't go into the trapping methods because I don't want people doing this. I want people to trap under supervision. So you need to be an apprentice falconer, and you need to have a sponsor show you the techniques. And this is why I haven't put trapping videos on this YouTube channel, because I don't want people doing this not only illegally, but I don't want them to be doing this incorrectly. And so with your sponsor, and you understand the processes, and you build your traps, and you go out and you catch your first bird, um, The one thing that you really have to understand is when you've trapped that very first red-tailed hawk and you've got it in your hands and you're looking at this beautiful creature, you're looking at it in the eyes, and your heart is just all the way up to your throat. The emotion is overwhelming. That here you have this incredibly beautiful, perfect red-tailed hawk, and it is your job as the falconer to not screw it up. And so you have to be fully prepared for that, and you have to be dedicated. And then if you do everything correctly, you will have an experience. If you decide that you're going to cut corners and take the process and leave out some critical fundamentals because you don't think you need them, you're going to be incredibly disappointed. In fact, I had one of my students, one of my falconers. Um, he's been one of my students for 30 years. Tremendously good falconer, just a really, really great guy. And he got himself a peregrine, and he hasn't flown long wings in quite a while. And he got himself a peregrine and started the process, and he was just having issues. He just couldn't understand what was going on, because his previous hawk, which was a Harris hawk, was just gold, just so perfect and so easy to work with. And now he's got this peregrine, and he's had falcons before he's been successful with, but he's just really having issues. And so I was up visiting with him a couple 3 months ago at his home, and we talked a little bit, and he was telling me all the problems he's having with this peregrine, and this peregrine just won't work for him. He just doesn't understand what the issue is. And so I started asking him questions. I says, okay, what's the peregrine's base weight? And he says, oh, I've been flying it at this weight. And I says, no, what's the base weight? And he says, I really didn't worry about the base weight. I just knew that the bird needed to fly at about this weight. And I says, no, what's the bird's base weight? Base weight is the weight the bird is when it is at its absolute fattest, when it's had all that it can eat for 2 or 3 weeks. And then once you establish that, then you put the bird on a scale and you weigh it, and then you write down that weight, and then you subtract somewhere between 10 and 20%, and that's the flying weight. And I says, okay, let's start from the beginning, shall we? You need to establish a base weight. So feed your bird up for the next 2 to 3 weeks. In that 3-week period of time, let's do all the proper manning that you need to do. And you've been kind of lazy about the whistle, so let's get the whistle training back in. And so I just walk him through like I would any beginning falconer, even though he's been a falconer for 30 years. And he called me on the phone last weekend, and he was thrilled. He says, it's flying wonderfully. He says, all the bad habits are gone. And I says, isn't it amazing when you use all of the basic steps and you go step by step, nice and slow and methodical. It says, if you would have done that, you would have had that bird flying in a month. And because you skipped some steps, your bird wasn't flying well after 6 months. You didn't save any time. And so it's extremely important to have a good mentor, someone who's very skilled at falconry, teach you and help walk you through all of the fundamentals. And don't ever skip a step. That is so important. I hope I answered the question. I probably went off on a tangent, didn't I?
Jody has sent a donation and says, thank you for sharing your wealth of knowledge and the care you provide for our precious wildlife. We appreciate you, Martin, Susan, and Scout.
Oh, well, thank you, Jody. And Scout, thanks you as well. That all of these donations help us feed the critters. And of course, most of you know that we're building a brand new raptor rescue center here in southern Utah. And for those that haven't heard, We are building. In fact, the building's been ordered. So the building is ordered. We are building an eagle flight chamber that is 40 feet wide and 100 feet long. It will be divided in the center with sliding walls so that we can close it off and have two chambers 20 feet wide and 100 feet long, specifically for eagles to get some exercise um, before they get released back into the wild. Along with the eagle flight chamber, we will have 15 new smaller flight chambers for hawks and falcons and owls. And we will also, on the new facility, have an on-site veterinary clinic and reception area. And so that's our big project. Because of people like you, we have raised the money to build this new facility. We're building it right here in Enoch, Utah, where we live. And so it'll be the biggest, nicest raptor rescue facility, one of the biggest, nicest ones in the entire United States. So we're all excited about building the new facility.
So I'm going to toss in a comment here because this was my mindset before I met and got to know Martin too. So we'll put this in so you can address it for everybody. She says all wild animals belong in the wild. The only exception is if an injury does not allow it.
Well, and I know where you're coming from. I understand that, and there are exceptions, and the exceptions are that everything that is domesticated comes from an ancestor that was wild. The dog, which came from a wolf, from the little toy poodles up to the Malamutes and Great Danes and so on. Humans have been building relationships with wild animals ever since we used flint to start fires and we lived in a cave. We developed relationships with animals. Falconry is very, very unique in that it is one of very, very few relationships between human and wildlife that is mutually beneficial. And as I said, the average life expectancy of this eagle in the wild is about 20 years, but in captivity we double that, because this eagle at 19 years old still has 20 plus years of good health, longevity, and a wonderful life ahead of it. Where in the wild, he would be considered old, and he would have a harder time catching his food, dealing with the snowstorm that's going on outside of my house right now. To stand out there, the wild is a really terrible place to make a living. Mother Nature is not a kind mother, and so because this is an eagle, he flies free, just like the wild eagles. He flies with the wild eagles. He follows me as I flush out rabbits for him to catch, and so basically the only reason he comes back, all of this right here, this comes off, and he is completely and totally free, and it's really his choice whether he returns to me or not. I do not own him. I do not possess him, and we talked about the courtship season. We do fly him through the courtship season, which, like I said, starts the end of December into January. And if he finds a pretty little lady eagle that's cuter than I am, he will fly away and never come back. I don't own him. He has the right to do that. Now, how many other relationships between wild animals and humans can say that? And so that's what makes falconry so unique and so special. They do have those opportunities, and not only does he have those opportunities, but this guy right here is a wildlife ambassador. He travels with me around the Western United States. We go to the schools, we go to scout groups, we go to Audubons, we go to community groups, we go to anybody and everybody that wants to to under to listen to my story, and I get an opportunity to teach people how beautiful and how magnificent these guys are and educate people. And so he's even more valuable because an eagle in the wild that you see off, 100 yards, 500 yards away through a pair of binoculars is beautiful. Yes, you're being silly. But to have one that you're able to see up close and personal, to have an animal that you can see its personality and you can see its intelligence and you can understand it, um, does more to protect the animals in the wild than anything else. In fact, when I first moved to Utah, um, offered my services as a wildlife rehabilitator and educator. And the one thing I noticed very quickly is that I was averaging about a dozen shot eagles every year here. Now, this was extremely rural, agricultural, small town of 4,000 people. And it wasn't that the people of Utah hated eagles, it's they saw no value in them. And so they would drive out through the agricultural areas around here and they'd see a big bird sitting on a power pole. And the only thing that would go through their minds was, there's a big bird, let's shoot it. Well, 43 years of school programs, 43 years of scout programs, community events, and I bring my hawk, my eagle, and my falcon with me. I now, after 43 years, get a shot bird of prey of any kind less than one every few years. Tremendous success. And the reason for that is there's nothing I can do about the good old boys. I can't fix the guys my age and older. There's nothing I can do. But I can teach their kids. And so when people here in southern Utah, they go out and they see these animals in the wild because they've been to one of my shows, uh, they understand the value. They understand how to interact with them properly and how not to disturb them. And so Scout is his value is significantly greater than just an eagle in the wild. He gets to be an eagle in the wild, but he also gets to educate the public. So there are reasons to have animals in captivity. Zoological facilities. I know there's a lot of animal rights people that think zoological facilities are terrible, but the reason that we have conservation efforts to protect wildlife is because of the education that people have received at these zoological parks. And so there are reasons. Does the average person, should they have an eagle? No, absolutely not. Um, if they are willing to dedicate their lives to do it properly and to be able to give these animals what they need to be healthy, happy, and basically wild, then I don't see that's an issue, especially when we can use them for education. So I hope that answers your question.
Billy Maldonado asks, is there any sponsors in the Green Bay, Wisconsin area that you know of?
That I know of, no, but are there? I'm sure there is. Um, and so what you need to do, Billy, is you need to contact your state fish and game, tell them that you're interested in becoming a falconer, ask them for all of the information they have on falconry. I'm sure they have a reading list of books and a list of equipment that you're supposed to have, and they can put you in touch with qualified falconers in your area and be able to say, okay, here's a list of general class or master class falconers that can apprentice you. And so that's all you have to do is just go to your local fish and game, and or you can go on your local state fish and game's website and look up, do a search for falconry in your area, and I believe there's a Wisconsin Falconers Club as well that you can join.
Nicholas asks, why not make it unlawful to sell falcons, hawks?
Well, to be honest with you, it is illegal to sell birds of prey unless you have the proper licenses and permits. Okay, it's kind of like um, driving a car. It's illegal to drive a car, period, unless you have a driver's license. And then with a driver's license, there's it's not a right to drive a car; it's a privilege. And so there's an awful lot of laws, rules, and regulations that you have to abide by in order to be able to drive a car. I have a pilot's license. It's the same thing. To fly an airplane, it's illegal for anyone to get into an airplane and go fly an airplane unless you are licensed to do so. And so, if someone is willing to put in the time and the effort to be able to work with these guys appropriately, um, to be able to get a hawk or a falcon through a captive breeding program, is actually it's a good thing because that's one less hawk or falcon removed from the wild. Even though the truth of the matter is, a falcon removes one from the wild, he flies it for a couple of years and then reintroduces it back to the wild and then flies a different one. The only thing you've done is you've actually given that hawk or falcon a better chance of survival because 80% of all birds of prey die the first year in the wild. And so a falconer taking one, flying it for a couple of years and putting it back in the wild just has given it a much better chance of survival. And so basically, if falconry is done correctly, just like driving a car or flying an airplane, if it's done correctly, it's a tremendous benefit, not only to the birds of prey, but to us as well. If done incorrectly, it's poaching, and it is inappropriate. I know you're getting bored, and people. That's my boy. Yes, we knew. Come on, big guy. And so that's really the essence of the whole discussion here. Is I I don't care almost what it is if it's done the right way, and if it's done with the proper licenses, the proper permits, the proper education. Um, Most things, I mean, I can think of a few exceptions, but almost everything can be done in a way that it is beneficial. Um, if if it's done illegally, it's incredibly detrimental. And so this is why falconry is literally the most regulated hunting sport in the world, and as it should be.
Okay, we're up. Our hour is up, but we got a few more super chats to mention. This one from Lisa likes photography. She just sent super chat of 2222, which is the day today.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you so very, very much. And go to the website. I do a lot of wildlife photography, so we're kindred spirits.
Oops. We also got one from Billy who sent 499. He also sent in that question.
Thank you, Billy.
And we've got another one from Jen who also has a question. She says, "Hi, Martin. I live north of you and have noticed a drastic increase in Cooper's hawk in my area. Are you aware of an increase in smaller in body size hawk population in urban and suburban areas?"
Good observation. Yes, that's absolutely true. Uh, the Cooper's hawk population, what Cooper's hawks require is large trees, a large kind of forested grove of trees. And so in a lot of the areas here in Utah, in fact, where I live right here, you know, when I moved here 40 years ago, there were, there were virtually no trees. And so trees have been planted, and trees were planted around my home and everybody else's homes throughout the area. And we're creating, with these large cottonwood trees and large Chinese elm trees, we are creating more Cooper's hawk habitat. And so the quality of the habitat is improving because of the large trees. And then secondly, something that is terrible that has happened, but it benefits the Cooper's hawk, and that is, if you're familiar with the ring-necked dove. The ring-necked dove is the same kind of dove that magicians use in their magic acts and have been sold here in the United States for pet birds in aviaries and and ornamental decorative birds. They have been turned loose. They have been populating. The ringneck dove is an invasive species. It is everywhere. It is taking up over nesting places for some of the more native birds that we have there. But the ringneck dove is the perfect food source for Cooper's hawks. And so we are seeing more Cooper's hawks because we've got more doves. We're seeing more Cooper's hawks because we're getting more and more large trees around subdivisions and areas. In fact, I have a Cooper's hawk last year that was nesting in the city park here in Cedar City. I have a pair of Cooper's hawks that come by all the time, catching my pigeons because the Cooper's hawk nest is less than a quarter mile from my house that's back in the subdivision. So yes, that's a great observation. We are seeing a lot more Cooper's hawks.
All right, I guess we can wrap it up.
Well, thank you guys. I greatly appreciate it. Scout appreciates all of your kindnesses and your questions, and we're very excited about the new facility that we're being built. So please kind of hang out with us and kind of watch the development of the new Enoch Wildlife Rescue Center. So we'll let you guys go, and please, if you have questions that you didn't get a chance to ask, you're certainly welcome to send me an email, and I'll be happy to respond to you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.